No more hidden verdicts, no more secrets sold. Every voice is a weapon, every story be told. Innocent till proven guilty, that's our final decree. Under this constitution we stand forever free. Phoenix in the dawn, truth ignites the sky. Together we stand tall, no more asking why.
Hey y'all, good evening. I know this is like a wild time to go live, but I could not help myself. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Now, I want everyone to keep an open mind. You can draw your own conclusions. This channel does not offer any legal, medical, or professional advice. Any resemblance to real people, living or deceased, beyond those publicly involved in cases discussed is purely coincidental. But I saw something tonight, and I just had to share this with you, because if you can't sleep right now and this case keeps you up at night, wait until I show you what just popped into my head. If you look at the live description, it says IDAHO4 OTHRAM mystery solved. It's a miracle. Mystery DNA, the unanswered evidence. And I'm going to show you exactly how my mind works, because I question the unthinkable. Now, I'm going to show you a quick video. Well, it's not really quick. It's about 24 minutes, but I'm going to speed it up at 1.5. And I want you to keep an open mind to everything I'm about to show you. Please keep an open mind. Get your logic hats on, and let's effing go, guys. Let's go. Listen to this. I'm going to play it in 1.5 speed.
It's hard because it's hard to know. He was just an amazing human. He loved everybody. He had touched so many lives.
Ethan Chapin's mother, Stacy, is remembering her oldest triplet nearly 3 years after his senseless murder as she joins a woman who helped solve his case on stage to talk about their new bond.
I could not hug her. And I do think that our paths were meant to intersect.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. The story that I'm going to share with you is really, really special, although it's rooted in incredible loss and sadness. It's part of something that happened in solving the mystery of who was behind the horror on King Road that Sunday morning on November 13th, 2022. That morning, as we have discussed so many times before, evil walked into that college rental home in Moscow, Idaho, and stole the lives of 4 beautiful college students: Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Even today, nearly 3 years later, it's still hard to believe that that photo of the 4 of them was taken, and 12 hours or so later, they were gone. Moscow police knew they had a bona fide whodunit on their hands and that they were in over their heads, so they called in Idaho State Police and the FBI to assist in what would become a massive criminal investigation watched by people around the world. There was one piece of evidence that would lead Moscow police to identify a suspect that could aid in their investigation. It was the person whose DNA was left on a K-bar knife sheath left next to the body of Maddie Mogen on her bed. Idaho State Police tested the DNA, and it didn't come back to anyone in CODIS. That's the FBI database of known felony offenders. ISP had a contract with OTHRAM Labs, which does investigative genetic genealogy testing and has helped solve cold cases. But this was different. This was an active, hot case, and a suspect who had murdered 4 college students was on the loose. Would he strike again soon? Time was absolutely of the essence. David and Kristen Middleman, they run OTHRAM Labs in Texas. It was Thanksgiving 2022, and they were taking family photos with their children when they received an urgent call. There was a case out of Idaho, and their help was needed. Kristen didn't even change into her usual suit. She and David went straight to the office. Kristen, David, and their team got to work. They accepted the DNA from the police who showed up, and they started the work of building family trees to determine whose DNA was on the snap of the knife sheath. Kristen said they built out the family trees and determined the source of the DNA likely came from a family in Pennsylvania with some Italian heritage. That's significant because it would later be determined that Brian Kohberger was the source of the DNA on the snap of that knife sheath. On December 10th, the FBI stepped in and took over the family tree search. 9 days later, the feds gave the name Brian Kohberger to Moscow police, and all of the pieces started to come together. Kohberger drove a white Hyundai Elantra. He fit the description given by one of the surviving roommates of the man in all black with bushy eyebrows and lived nearby in Pullman, Washington. And then there was the cell phone data showing that he'd been in Moscow late at night on many occasions leading up to the night of the murders. Koberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania on December 30th, 2022. He pleaded guilty weeks before jury selection was set to begin just this past summer and is serving 4 consecutive life sentences. There's a reason Crime Fix is one of the top-ranked shows on YouTube right now, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They're a firm with more than 1,000 from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're ever hurt, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/criminology that helped.
Okay, did you all hear that? I know that there are some key takeaways. I want you to be very, very mindful of what I'm about to show you. So they say that it was a Italian family in Pennsylvania. Well, what's the first thing do you think I thought of? Well, what is Koberger's surname? It comes from German. Okay? What's the surname of Koberger? It's German. And then I thought, well, who else is involved in this case? Listen, guys, this is freaking wild as hell, okay? So I thought, well, let me check another name, the surname of Decor, right? Where does it come from? Well, a couple of things that I learned right here is it is, oh my God, I had it just a few minutes ago. I must have clicked off of it. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Don't go nowhere. I must have clicked off the wrong one. Hold on. I'm embarrassed. Okay, well, let's go to the next name. Okay, I'll share this one instead. The surname, Showalter. German again. No ticket, guys. No ticket. Okay? All right? So what other names come up? Do you remember any other names? Okay, Kopaka. J-O-P. All right, I'll look at this one on the fly. Here we go. Nope, sorry. Cheslovic. Yeah, no, not at all. Keep going, guys. I know you're going to get it. I know you're going to get it. I know you're going to get it. It's not even Koberger's mom. You guys. Showalter. Nope. Nope. German. Guess what I came up with? Guess what I freaking came up with, guys? Oh my God. Is this unknown male B, D? Could this possibly be? This is all speculative. All speculative. All. David B, I don't even think he's strong enough to kill a fly. Okay? I don't even think so. I don't even think so. It has to be somebody, a male, angry, 20 to 28, unknown DNA, nothing in CODIS. OTHRAM is giving us the clues, guys. Latin and in Pennsylvania. All alleged, absolutely. All alleged. Okay? Male, DNA, B or D. Okay, let's look up Loach. Let's look up surname Loach. Loach, nope. Scotland. Surname Loach, Scotland. So my next step was to see if there was anybody with the last name of Lotta in Pennsylvania. Yeah, there's quite a few people. Definitely quite a few people. But Pennsylvania and an Italian name, how could you possibly figure this one out? How? It's an Italian word meaning medieval song derived from Latin laudare, meaning to praise. Also, the last name is a famous Formula One driver. Comes from Italy. And this is all speculation. Is there anyone in Pennsylvania with that last name? Yep. Is there anyone in Pennsylvania with any more Latin names? Is it M-O-W-I-C-H, Mowich? No, I doubt it. Surname, that is Native American. I know that for sure. Nope. None. Any other names that you can think of? Any other names at all? Nope. Kopaka came from Pennsylvania, but he is not of Latin descent. No Latin descent. I'm just ruling it out, Andrade. Yeah, no Latin descent. But what happened in the ISP documents that made us think it was Jack DeCour? Because they found possible blood and bullet fragments, bullet residue in Adam and Jack's place. Rosendahl? No, I don't think so, but I'll check it. Hold on. Surname Rosendahl. Rosendahl. Let me see where it comes from. Meaning and family history. Oh, they came from Israel. Nope. This one says Israel. Surname. Coat and crest of arms. Nope. Any other names come to mind? DeCour? Nope, I already did DeCour. DeCour says, hold on a minute. Surname. I already did that one. Where'd it go? Surname DeCour is... I wanted to say Scotland. Where did it come from? French. DeCour. French. Old word meaning courtesy or courteous. Nope, not that one either. Well, Goncalves. That one is Brazilian Portuguese. Farley. Let's look at the surname Farley. Surname Farley is Anglo-Saxon. Right here, Farley. Irish. Anyone else? Payne. P-A-Y-N-E. Surname Payne. This is a joint effort here. Payne. Surname. French. Not Payne. Keep going. Who else? Who else? No, I don't think. Surname. Hold on. Surname Mortensen is descendants, rich history, cultural. Let me see where it's at. Norway. Nope. Yes, they said Italian. Italian and in Pennsylvania. Funke, no, surname, that's German. Surname, hold on. Nope, that's German. Totally German. What else? Mason, oh, that's a good one. Mason, I think it's almost like Miller. It's masonry. I think it's Old English, Scotland. Yep. Anyone else? I already did Rosenthal. Mason. Gotta end in a vowel. Mancotti, think of Green. Green is Italian. I think Green is, isn't it? Surname Green. Surname, oh no, that's Anglo-Saxon too. I thought it was. I don't know how to spell. Yeah, but I don't think David is strong enough. Surname Baracoa. I thought it was like Hispanic. Baracoa, let me see. Baracoa, how do you say his name? David Baracoa. Okay, let me see what his surname is. I don't think he's strong enough to hurt a fly. But It's Basque. Wow. It's actually Basque. There's no Latin there, baby. All right. Who else? Chapin. We're just throwing out names. The coach with the dark hair. Yelk. Who's Yelk? Oh, Yelk. Okay. I don't think they're Latin. I don't think so. Surname Yelk is German. Wow. A lot of Germans. Beers. I don't know where beers came from. Chapin. I know Chapin is not Italian. I think it's Scottish, isn't it? Oh, French or Spanish. Okay, so it's not Chapin. Bailey. Bailey is Irish. Surname Bailey. English or Scottish? I was wrong there. Scottish. Bailey. Alpha Kenny. He is Brazilian. Johnson. Johnson. You know what's weird? Oh, gosh. He does have 4 brothers, by the way. Johnson comes from original background, England. Nope. Not that one either. Emily Alt. No, it had to be a male, guys. A male. Scottish. Male. Beers is a part of the Aryan Knights. Okay, cool. Granny, how do we know this is another? I don't know. I'm not going to say that. What nation are you searching? Gower. Okay, that's a good one. Surname Gower. Nope. Angelo Norman, which comes from England. Any more? Any more? Harsh. Surname Harsh. Surname Harsh is Nepal. Hebrew. All right. Anybody else? I've got like 80 tabs open. Middleman. You guys funny, honey. Funny. McMichaels. JD, and she dated Decor or something. Nope. I got here late. Hey, Jethro. So let's go back watching the rest of this video, and I'll come back to what I found.
Catch the person who killed her beautiful boy. Stacy and Kristen actually met just briefly at CrimeCon in 2023, a chance encounter where Stacy said she was sharing her story with other parents of murder victims when a woman who she learned was Kristen came up to her and hugged her and said, "You don't have to worry," and walked away. It wasn't until the gag order was lifted in mid-July that Kristen and Stacy met. Jim and Stacy Chapin flew to Texas right after the gag order was lifted and met with David and Kristen at OTHRAM. I sat down with Kristen and Stacy at CrimeCon over the weekend. So let's get back to that hug in 2023. Can you tell me about that and how much that meant?
Literally all it was. But even at the time, I don't think I realized what it meant. I didn't know who she was. I mean, I literally Googled her name afterwards. But the hug went on to mean literally everything. I didn't tell a soul. I couldn't. I didn't know. I didn't know if I could. I didn't even tell my kids. I told my husband, and that was it. But there were a couple of our darkest days where we literally, and Kristen loved that part of the story, that was like, we relied on that hug, that we were going to get through this thing. It meant there was something out there that was beyond anything that we could potentially, know that we knew about, really.
And I couldn't say more, right? I couldn't
Right.
say anything.
Right.
But I knew I had to say something.
Right.
Because why do this? Why? I mean, my entire role at OTHRAM is to advocacy for victims. And to see that right next to me, to know that I can say something to help her and to not be able to do it. I just remember that moment. And I remember walking down and telling David, "You can fire me if you need to." I hugged her.
I just talked to
And I said, "It's going to be okay," because I could not hug her. And I do think that our paths were meant to intersect. There's a lot of commonalities that I didn't know anything about any of the families at the time outside of what had happened, right? And so we focus on the actual case. And so I didn't know your personality, your relationship with Jim, the fact that you had triplets that were 2 boys and a girl. There are so many commonalities in the sense that we have 2 boys and a girl, and we have the 2 older kids. Our oldest was the exact same age. And so I do think that once I got to know Stacy and Jim, there's some weird parallels in our in the way we process things.
Our love for our husbands.
And our love for our husbands and our love for our families.
Right, yeah.
And just, we're both the strong ones, I think.
Yeah.
We're both the
anchor.
In a lot of ways. And so there was a lot more to relate on that I had no idea about in that room. But I knew I had to say something to her. And the fact that it mattered, because it could have seemed so insignificant to her. Like she said, how many people at CrimeCon are hugging her? A million people are hugging her and saying something. And so who is this one person that walks up to me and says, a few words, right? It could have meant nothing. And she could have just, when I called after the gag order, she could have said, I don't remember a Kristen Middleman, right? And that could have been a very much an outcome.
And I, over the course of the years, I would Google OTHRAM, right? Like, I'm like, do I reach out? Do I not? And we just couldn't. I mean, I didn't know anything I wasn't supposed to know, but the hug, there was something about it. And so we joke about how do we get that hug to everybody, right? Which is,
I'm not hugging everybody.
No, I know that. but the idea of it,
You're a scientist. When you realized what you were working on, does that change the case, or do you just stick to the science?
Of course, it changes the case. I knew that these were kids that were my daughter's age. I knew that there were people afraid to come back to school. My daughter was afraid to go back to school. She was in a completely different state. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that doesn't affect me. Of course, it affects me. What we do is the same for every case. We tested the feasibility of this case just as we would any other case. And if it wasn't feasible for the technology, we wouldn't have done it. But it was. And there was so much DNA in comparison to some of these cold cases we worked. And that was not what was represented in the media.
Now, one thing that was frustrating for the Middlemans was the amount of information floating around social media about the case, including the DNA on the sheath, specifically the quantity. The amount of DNA left on the snap of the sheath was actually a large quantity. You might not be able to see it, but it was a lot. And we've talked about that with a DNA expert here on Crime Fix before. It was repeatedly described as trace DNA, and that simply wasn't true.
We could have done this 6 times, 7 times if we had to, right? This wasn't one of those cases where you're looking at 7 cells like we have in the past.
And I just, that is a whole piece of why it's important for potentially everybody, because the lack of that information caused social media to make their own interpretations of what they thought it was. And it hurt a lot of people. It hurts the kids involved. It hurts the families involved.
That's what hurt. It hurt you guys.
All we can do is read it. You can't respond. You can't, there's nothing you can do.
And I knew that it was fine. I knew what we had done, and no one else did. You brought up the DNA, the FBI coming into this case in December 10th. Yes, but we work with the FBI in hundreds and hundreds of cases. We were the only profile built. People went down this line of the FBI built a different profile. They didn't match. There's no such other profile. We were the only advanced DNA lab to test this case. And it was certain to us from the very beginning, and to the FBI and to the law enforcement working the case, what the answer was, right? But I couldn't tell people that really needed to know that, like Stacy. And then there was all this stuff going on in the media that we couldn't correct because the people actually working on the case were gagged. And I feel like that hurt the families the most, and maybe the survivors. But it's a devastating scenario where it shouldn't be that case.
As I mentioned, the FBI took over what OTHRAM had started on December 10th of 2022, but the Middlemans had determined the suspect was in Pennsylvania. Kristen, tell me how far you took this with the genealogy work.
We were able to complete the genealogy, bringing in the ancestry and all the matches that were there. And the tree that we turned over to law enforcement with our SNP profile to start the target testing is a tree that Kohlberger would be found on.
And it was his family. You said you found somebody that was like Italian, had some Italian heritage in Pennsylvania, correct?
So how this and how this technology works is you give law enforcement that at this generation and this family, these could be the people that could be possible matches to this. And then they figure out, did any one of those have the type of weapon that was used in the crime scene registered? Did they own the type of car that was seen at the crime scene? Were they in Idaho at the time of the murder or wherever the murder might have happened? And then they contextualize that and decide who is the most likely suspect. And they go about target testing for that.
The technology that OTHRAM uses is typically used in cold cases, but the Chapins would like to make the technology more accessible to other families in their position. They also believe it would have been helpful had the use of the technology in the case been more widely publicized in the very beginning.
And I don't know, I think you have to be careful about that, because I still respect the gag order and the reason why there wasn't information going out. But at the same time, like, for example, the affidavit that was released, right? If the one point on the DNA would have said, in a sentence, OTHRAM tested and identified the perpetrator, or it's the perpetrator's DNA on the knife sheath. That doesn't solve the crime. We still need all of law enforcement to do that. But I think it would have really, it would have eased a lot of people's not only families' minds, kids' minds, it would have also quieted some social media spirals that went kind of crazy.
Do you think, looking back, maybe the gag order wasn't the right move?
No,
Because the defense wanted it.
I didn't have any problem with the gag order.
Yeah. But you would like this technology available to people, other families in your position.
Anybody. It's not everybody should have access to this.
How do you want that message to get out? Like, how would you like, how are you going to work with Kristen to maybe?
Well, we're trying to define that right now, right? But again, like in our case, using it as an example, if the affidavit, or just the families just knew that, there has been 100%, that the DNA has been, the perpetrator has been identified by DNA on the case with OTHRAM, and that's all you know. That's a pretty good piece of information to go forward with.
That information was not put in the probable cause affidavit because law enforcement treats it as a tip, but the gag order prevented anyone from talking about it publicly. OTHRAM's work only became known publicly through court documents much later on in the case.
I'm not criticizing anybody. There is no criticism. Yeah. There has been, but not from our family. We have always supported everybody that was working on our case. But even just that tidbit of information, you'd go through the next 2 years just a little bit easier, knowing that that's pretty solid evidence in the case. It still takes everybody else. But that little piece of knowledge is comforting, I guess, for lack of a better word.
No, it's true. And to me, this technology obviously works. We're sitting underneath a, entire column of victims that have gotten answers, perpetrators that have been caught, right? And it works in cold cases, but it works even easier in real-time cases because the DNA is fresh. You're not looking at DNA that was in an ocean for 100 years or burnt or left in a sewage tank. You're looking at something that came from yesterday's crime scene. That's incredible. And the fact that it worked in this case and we were able to give Stacy's family and the other families the answers that they needed, get him off the street before he committed that next crime is great. But it could work for every case real time. And there really shouldn't be an excuse for not using it. Law enforcement uses any camera that might be anywhere near a crime scene to see what might have happened at the crime scene. They use any eyewitness that was at a crime scene to ask them what they saw so they could piece pieces together. Why don't they use all the information they can get from a DNA at the crime scene the same way? We're not giving you the answer. We're giving you that investigative information about who left DNA at the crime scene. And then law enforcement comes in and they contextualize that within their investigation. And so why are we omitting a very important part of the information up front? Because there's no funding, there's no precedent, there's no method, but we're creating all of that. And so I think Stacey and I will go create that, yes, with Ethan at the forefront of that movement, because in his honor, I hope that there is no case that sits at a dead end in a contemporary investigation, because that's when it's most critical to catch that person real time, because they're going to commit that crime again. They're not going to stop. Most crime is serial. We all know that.
Stacey said throughout the case, they really only had the information that the public had, but she said prosecutors and police always answered their questions.
I thought the prosecutors were great in telling us what they could tell us. I never questioned the fact that they couldn't. We've said it, we had to let the prosecutors do their job, and our job was parents. You guys do, and we were told from the very beginning, it's going to take a long time. You're kind of at the hands of the defense to make sure that it goes through all of the stages that it has to go through. And so we decided, okay, we're not going to let that piece, something that we cannot control, impact how we feel about moving forward.
Kohberger was arrested in the early morning hours of December 30th, 47 days after the murders. I asked Stacey Chapin what it was like to get that call. It was around 11 p.m. Pacific time, and how she felt about sending Ethan's siblings, Maisie and Hunter, back to the University of Idaho.
Honestly, for us, it's probably different because we have the only kids that were headed back to university. I mean, you have to understand, by the time we put the kids back in school, we had 60 days. So the call, we'd made a decision, the kids were going back, but Maisie was starting to be like, I don't know if it's right to go back if we do not know who this person is. And behind the scenes, Jim and I were like, that's a valid.
If they did not know who the person was, what? You guys have got to be kidding me. By the time they went back to school, this guy was in jail. He was arrested from the PCA and all the documents they put together. He was in jail. He was in jail. So why was Maisie challenging her gut instinct to not go back to school and her have them say if he wasn't caught? Okay, that is intuition. That prompting, you cannot fake. That is strong intuition. I humbly would be like, I would look at everyone as a suspect, especially the way their behaviors were. Now, I'm going to propose a theory to you, and I want to see how you're going to respond. I'm watching the chat. Now, I know technology is not perfect. I know that DNA is not perfect, because look at what we have here. We have a cluster F. What do I mean? This DNA that was found was not to be Koberger's. It wasn't anywhere else in the residence, the crime scene, the house, not his apartment, not his car. It wasn't on any of the victims. It was only on a knife sheath. A knife sheath, guys. Okay? Now stay with me here. I'll look at McMichael. I think it's Irish. Now, I want to be very clear when I say this. Their DNA that they sent to the lab, okay? Remember, I showed you earlier, MPD had Blaker jump on an airplane, go get the DNA that was sent to ISP. ISP didn't have any technology enough to figure out who it was. They reached out to OTHRAM, and they sent Blaker from Moscow to fly on the airplane and go to Houston. Okay. Now, let me get this straight. If it was the knife sheath that they found at the crime scene, which I believe it was there, I believe it exists. I don't need to see a picture. The reason I'm saying I believe it exists is because not only did they get some DNA swab off the knife sheath clasp, they also got blood DNA. The perpetrator was injured. The blood was on the sheath and on the bed with Maddie and Kaylee, which proved to come up in the DNA. Okay? Now, this is just a theory. Now, no, it's not a Reddit theory. This is a Phoenix theory. If they got the DNA of Koberger and they got an unknown male DNA, they didn't know who the unknown male was, so they went after Koberger. But they got something wrong. They got something really wrong, in my humble opinion, allegedly. They thought Koberger was of Italian descent. He's of German descent. But who is the only other Italian name in this group of people that could possibly be a suspect? And that is where I came up with, well, let's figure out who's Italian in this group first. And then let's go ahead and see who probably would have known this circle of people, and also have a document that would show me that it could possibly tie to someone else. And lo and behold, I found a document. Now, first of all, we need to know where this individual came from. His hometown is Buell, Idaho. In the ISP documents, there is no one else listed from Buell, Idaho. He was in hobbies like basketball, snowboarding, weightlifting, traveling, football, and he also wanted to move to Florida after graduation, and he wanted to get his commercial pilot license. Wow. Interesting. And he played golf. So I figured, let me go back to any ISP document that shows that somebody was from Buell. And I found one report, and that was supplement 0005. Now just stay with me. Okay. Brown hair, hazel eyes. Well, I mean, that was the wrong one that I wanted to find. Oh, they didn't even list him. Hold on a minute. Witness. Yes, right here. They didn't even list him, but they did list he lives in Buell. 22, white male, born in 2000. Check, 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 double check. Two detectives went out to Buell to interview. Blank relate us to the following. He is roomed with blank blank. So he's a roommate. He's known Kaylee since his freshman year. They were in the same pledge class, so they hung out together periodically over the last 4 years. He even visited her house in Coeur d'Alene once. He knew Xana as well, but not as well as Kaylee. He knew Maddie as well, but didn't hang out a lot. Kaylee and Blank had been dating since high school. They were off and on and have broke up twice. They had recently broke up because she accepted a job in Dallas. So they were settling their things before she left after the semester. They broke up about 2 months ago. I've never heard from Kaylee about anyone stalking or giving her bad vibes. He had heard there was someone following her out in Winco a couple of months ago. Well, how in the world could he just say that he's never heard about any stalking, but then here's this incident that happened in October that they pulled the video and found the guy, and it's all documented, right? He says he had heard there was someone following her a couple months ago. He heard from friends she had someone follow her out of Winco to her car. He heard the story from blank blank, a sorority sister of Kaylee's. Blank is in California right now, and her number is blank. Well, we know who that is, right? He works at blank in Moscow, and he saw Kaylee and Maddie and blank leave together that night. So they were at the corner club. That's where he worked. And he saw them leave. That was the last time he saw them. They said they were going to John's Alley, which we know they didn't. They went to the grub truck, and we're going to get some friends to go with them. They didn't end up going there, though. He didn't know where they were before they showed up at the corner bar. He had seen Xana at some parties, but really didn't know her very personally. He tried to recruit Ethan into his fraternity, but otherwise didn't really know him. Now, isn't that something? Didn't I say before, wasn't there they were vying for pledges and this and that? I mean, I don't know what they get if somebody joins their fraternity or something. Is it like a consolation prize or a super frat of the year award or recruitment? I don't know. Anyways, and he says he doesn't know of anyone who'd want to harm any of them. They were really nice people. Blank wouldn't have harmed Kaylee. He loves her and thought they would be married. They have a great relationship even when they were not together. He is a calm and kind person. He's into sports, not an outdoorsman. He doesn't have a knife. He has never heard Blank say anything bad about Kaylee. And then he throws this in there. There's an apartment complex behind the victim's house that has a lot of sketchy people in it, guys. Right? There's registered sex offenders living in it. That place is behind blank blank apartments. There are windows facing the girl's house, and it's adjacent to the brown brick apartment complex. We concluded the interview. How odd was that? He doesn't know a lot, huh? How odd was that? Okay. So now that we've got that in place, now that we've seen who he is, now that we know he's from Italian descent, he's the only one that I know that I found somebody with a connection of the United States Marine Corps. The only one. Now, I don't believe in coincidences if you've heard me say this before. I have never heard. Now, Navy and Marine Corps, they issue standard back in the day. Now, back in the day, this family goes a long history in Pennsylvania. And back in the day, they would issue both. I've done my research, folks. They would issue both a pistol and, a Colt 45 and or an M1911 pistol with a K-bar. Now, I got this directly from somebody who was in the Marine Corps during this time frame. They would absolutely issue one. Now, are there any other surnames that you want me to look up? Gover? Who's Gover? Gower? No. No. Any other names? I've been into genealogy for a long time too. My aunt actually traced our family tree all the way back to the early 1700s in Spain. Thompson. Thompson is not Latin or Italian. Surname, Thompson. I don't think it's English. Thompson is English. What else? Vito. Yep, it's Italian. But I don't think Joe Vito was there. Surname, Vito. Italy. Latin. Who else? 1998 is when my hubby enlisted in the Marines. Whoop! Thank him for his service. Thank you, thank you. Let's listen to the rest of this.
Valid concern, right? I mean, and so for us, it was a relief. It was a step in the process that moved us forward.
Yeah. It was just a huge relief that they have a suspect.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And the kids, was there any hesitation once they had a suspect in sending Maisie and Hunter back?
Nope.
Because they had support with their friends.
There was just what else? You know, it's two 20-year-olds, right? And we'd had 60 days together because the university released them from school, gave them the grades that they had on that day. And, you know, you're still sitting around. What are we accomplishing? You know? So we had to go back and finish what we started. We spent a lot of time as a family discussing what that looked like. But that was really the only answer. You're going to go back, finish what you started. Yeah. Ethan would have only wanted that. And they graduated in May. And the greatest for me as a mom, part of the story is that from that, what I consider the lowest part of our life, our kids went on and graduated with honors, which speaks to their, their resilience, to the end of it. So they're amazing kids. Yeah.
The Chapins have worked to make some good come out of Ethan's murder. They founded the Ethan Smiles Foundation in his memory.
Okay, folks. So what do you think of that? Is it possible that this DNA company actually got it wrong because they basically said, yeah, we've got a match. We've got a match in our system, and it happens to be Brian Koberger. His DNA was on the sheath, but it wasn't the blood DNA from someone who was injured. Is that possible? Mowich is American Indian, not Latin, or lives in Pennsylvania. The only people that I found living in Pennsylvania with the last name was Lauda. That was the only one that I found. There were other people that I found in regards to how many people that originated and their families originated from Pennsylvania was this family. Other than, in fact, Koberger, but not of Latin descent. He was German. Jack Kopaka, nope. 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 They might have rushed it and screwed it up, but they waited 20 plus days to arrest him or put together some type of DNA. They said it was a tip. His name came from a tip. Nope. Kopaka is not. I already did the surname. Guys, I know something about DNA. I'm telling you. Kopaka is Ches. So here, I'll add it to the stage so you guys can see it. What else? Gunderson? No, let me check. Surname. Gunderson. Watch it be German too. Gunderson. Yep, German. Old French and German. Okay, what else? Knight. Knight would probably be German. Surname. Knight. English, actually. English. Because the FBI came back, it doubled in size. I don't know what to believe anymore. All for the storyline if it all connects. Yep. Yep. So do a little research tonight and take a look at what you find. I dug a little bit more. I wanted to know more about this person, this individual that allegedly disappeared. There is no proof that he actually disappeared, but he did want to move to Florida. He wanted to get a pilot's license. And I found the report. He says he was from Buell. He's now 25. He was 22 at the time. I looked at all his career preps from high school. Usually it tells me how tall they are. He's pretty tall, but I mean, if the shoe fits, guys, is it even possible? Is it possible? And he's the only one that I found that had relatives that could be in the United States Marine Corps, Navy, and Marine Corps records in Pennsylvania. So there's a whole listing, a whole history behind here. It's all alleged. We're just going by what OTHRAM said, because Koberger's DNA, he doesn't originate from Italy, no Latin. I mean, the only other thing, not even his mother's maiden name, Luigi Mangione, is Italian. He went missing November 2022. That's good. Koberger is a town in Coburg, yeah, in Bavaria. Yep. Marianne Kohlberger's maiden name was not Italian. They are German. Isn't it freaking wild? Schreiger. That sounds German too. Let me check it. Surname. Schreiger is... Let me see. Genealogy. Origin. Let me look. German. It's a form of Schreiger. So what else? Anybody else's last name? The judge? No. Anyone else? Mom's surname. I will not give that out. It's not public record. But there is one document that I found. I've requested the marriage cert. So I don't know if I'm going to get that. But Marianne, it looks like somebody has scrubbed most of the information online that was public. I even went to the Wayback Machine. I searched old records. And nothing came up. Nothing available. So I will continue looking for public records for Marianne. But I didn't find anything in Pennsylvania, and it looks like perhaps they lived at one time in New Jersey. That is public information, but I have not found anything else other than that. So any other last names you want me to check? Someone said today Brian's mom was Italian. I've not found anything to confirm she was Italian. However, it did say German, French linguistics, French Argonauts, etc. running from King's. Yeah, you have to look. I love your name, Hallie. You have to look at the history, right? I'm going with Adam P. Who's Adam P? Is there another Adam? Is there more than one Adam? Not Brian's mom, his dad. Robinson? No, Robinson is not Italian. Didn't BK do genealogy test ago and found out Adam? No, P is Y. What? P is you. Oh, I'm like, what are you talking about? No. Okay, so yeah, Mary Ann Koberger. The only thing I found. Hold on one second. Let me see if this is. Hold on one second. Florida. Yeah, they are not. They are German, folks. German. I wonder if they got Koberger's DNA from the database when he tested it, because that's what they look for. And then the unknown male is actually the Italian. And this is all alleged. This is all a working theory, but it makes more sense. Dylan's boyfriend was Quinn. Let me see what the surname is of Quinn. No, what was his last name? Was it Quinn? Irish? Let me double check. What does anybody know what his last name was? Quinn Kelly. Kelly, I think, is Irish too. Hold on. Quinn Kelly. Yep, Irish. Wouldn't be Italian. Wouldn't be Latin. Wouldn't be Italian. Would not be Latin. And I still think 4 brothers are 4 frat brothers, in my humble opinion. Let me just take a look at something and see. What is Brian's sister's name? Isn't it Rachel? Let me see. Koberger genealogy, family tree. Basically, both sides are German. I wonder where they met. New Jersey? German, meaning merchant. Medieval times. They originated from New Jersey, not Pennsylvania. They must have moved to Pennsylvania. But wasn't his dad in the military at one time, I believe? They lived in Florida. Quinn is Irish. Adam Park. Who's Adam Park? I've never heard of Adam Park. U of I. Let me look. Adam Park, U of I. Don't see anybody on the roster. Adam Park, Seattle. Adam Park. Nope. Who's Adam Park? That's somebody new. Demetrius Robinson is not. He is African American. 4 brothers. Brent. Nope. Brent is not Italian. Not Kopaka. It's Czech Republic, Kopaka. That's what the ancestry says. All right. I think we've exhausted names. No? Probably from my Adam P. Tony Park His son is Adam Park. All right, give me 1 second. Let me look at the surnames. Park is English Scottish background, so that is not. Nonan. Who's Nonan? Quinn, Cole, Ethan. I checked everybody's names. Cole Beringberger. I checked everyone's. The only person that came up with Italian that had any relation to Pennsylvania, any relation to the military, and that's what I got. So Paul, let me just say, is it Paul? Paul Lauda. His family started in 1797. And they came over from Italy and they landed in Pennsylvania. And someone in the family joined the military. It's in the register for the U.S. Navy Index of Navy and Marine Corps Awards. And that was in 1994. So someone in the family with that surname. See, it's easier for women to hide because they can get married and change their name like a million times. They can get married as many times as they want and change their name. It's easier to follow a surname by a male because their names never change unless they legally change their names. That's a whole nother can of worms. So if you look, I looked up Farley, looked up that one. I checked Yelp. The only reason he's sus is the hand signs at the grub truck. Why? I don't know, but remember the ISP document when they interviewed Decor and they went back to swab his entryway for possible blood and bullet residue. The ISP lab never came back and told us what it was in fact, right? They never told us. Then the guys over at ISP go and do a surveillance and they're surveillancing around in Boise 2 silver cars and 1 white car. But remember, if anybody was injured, anybody at all, there's one document that comes to my mind, and I don't know why it just came to my mind. There is a document. What is the name of that town? Hold on. I think it's Micah. There is a document. Let me grab Google Maps. Let me find out what the document is. Hold on. Let me look at my cheat sheet. Micah, Highway 95. And this would make sense. 0168 is the document that I'm going to reference real quick and show you. 168 is the supplement number. 168. Hold on. I got to get there. I didn't put a page number. 67. 168. Here's 168, folks. Here's the details in black and white so you can go read them for yourself. 168 did an interview. So-and-so had several occasions they've been interviewing this person. They interviewed them at least that I know of 2 or 3 times. Okay? And in this document, it states he was the ex-boyfriend of Kaylee Goncalves. They've been dating, yada, 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 yada. And it goes all the way down a couple more pages. And it says right here, on November 18th, after he got a lawyer, he consented to a search of his rooms. All right? They search his bathroom, common areas, and downstairs laundry of his apartment in Moscow. It's the home. It's the home on King, okay? The forensic guy he brings enters the apartment on the 18th, and they search the areas that he had consented to, and we found a drop of possible blood on the wall of the entry. A sample of this was collected. We also noticed there had been 5 to 6 drops of blood on a kitchen wall. Samples were also collected. The search and location of possible bullet drop samples was documented through photographs by forensic scientist Hogan. We left the apartment and it was all sent in the supplement and transferred to Moscow Police Department. The search was also documented by video recording. These also were placed on a disc and sent to the Moscow Police Department. No follow-up was given to us in any of these documents. None. We don't even know the outcome of Jack Showalter's shower curtain or his hallway. Okay? So not only was Showalter have possible blood on the shower curtain because the maintenance workers had to get in there and the hallway, but now they have possible blood on the wall and entryway where Jack DeCour lived with Adam. I hope that you guys are connecting the dots. Now, the only person who had, well, I don't want to say the only person. Let me rephrase this. In the ISP documents, there is a document that says that they were looking, and I don't have the reference, dang it. They were looking for a car that was white going up Highway 95 up into a little town called Micah. What's so important with Micah? Well, somebody asked me the other day in a, I guess it was a thread that I put a post. Yeah, it was on a post. Kootenai County Health. When you look at a map, let me grab a map. And I want you to show you real quick this map, why it's important. Because on this map, you will see Moscow right down here. See how it splits? Pullman's on this side, Moscow's over here. I hope you guys can see this. I'm over here explaining this, making sure the map is here. Now, ISP pulled warrants. They pulled information from all the hospitals and where anyone could have gone to. And the route that they found a car going was Highway 95 all the way up. And where's Kootenai County? Where's Kootenai County Health? Well, there's Micah. They saw a car going down Micah, a white car with Idaho plates, not Washington plates and not Pennsylvania plates, going all the way up here. And where is Kootenai Health? Right here. There were 77 injuries. 77 stabbing injuries. Okay? 77. And not one of them, I think, let me pull the document up. It says that they were shocked. Keyword is clinic. Here's the key. Here's the narrative. It says, on the 6th, I asked all these clinics. Kootenai County had 77 patients treated for sharp object laceration or puncture wounds, and all of the providers advised no wounds consistent with what we were looking for. Now tell me, what wounds were they looking for? They don't know if this perpetrator was stabbed in the gut, got cut on the hand, on the face, on the neck, on the shoulders, on the torso, on the leg. It just says, I found it odd. Kootenai Health provided a list of 77 patients treated for sharp object laceration or puncture wounds, while all of the providers advised treating no wounds consistent with that. Well, Were they looking for the right type of wounds? What did they ask for? They just asked if any patients treated for knife wounds in the days following the homicides. Well, they were going to Kootenai Health all the way out here up 95. And what is out there? Does anybody know what's out here? Anybody know at all? Bingo. This little town is out on 95, other than Coeur d'Alene, Hayden Lake, some cabins at the lake, and Sportsman's Park. That's it. There's not much out there, folks. Athol, I've been there. Tiny little place. There's not much out there. Not at all. That's it. So, what did they do? They just didn't pursue it anymore? I don't know. But I'm just saying, a little information goes a long way. A long way. So I don't know who went to the hospital or why or what happened, but I'm sure by the end of maybe next year, hopefully we'll learn some more information. But I saw that video tonight and I thought, oh, OTHRAM Labs told us they were of Italian descent and living in Pennsylvania. They got the Pennsylvania right, but all the history that I've looked at shows Kobergers being German. So take it for what it's worth. Leave what you don't. And that's pretty much what I figured this evening I would dig into live. So I'm glad you all joined me. I'm glad you had fun. This chat has been off the hook. Off the hook. So if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section. You guys are sharing the heck out of the way. Absolutely amazing. And don't forget to sign the, whatchamacallit. Why'd I just draw a blank? The Justice for All. There is a link on the website for this. The rest of your night, get some rest, and you know what, at this point, give it to God and go to bed. Tomorrow's another day we fight. Be well.
No more hidden verdicts, no more secrets sold. Every voice is a weapon, every story be told. Innocent till proven guilty, that's our final decree. Under this constitution we stand forever free. Phoenix in the dawn, truth ignites the sky. Together we stand tall, no more asking why.